Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war. Introduction. Can you recognize this? This is National Flag of India, which shows three colors: orange, green and white. At the center of the white color, you can see a circle known as Ashoka Chakra, which is named after Ashoka the Great. Do you know who was Ashoka and why he was called Ashoka the Great? Ashoka was one of the greatest emperors of all times. Emperor Ashoka was a Mauryan ruler whose empire spread across the Indian subcontinent, covering a vast area. Once he was known as a wicked king, but a war changed him into a Dharma king. His life changed and he became great and did work for social welfare. Let us see what were the circumstances and how they changed his life. In this chapter, you will learn about the King Ashoka, his empire and his work for Buddhism. Early life of Ashoka. Ashoka was born in 302 BC. He was the grandson and second successor of Chandragupta, who founded the Mauryan dynasty and empire in about 324 BC. Chandragupta was advised and guided by a wise man, Chanakya or Kautilya. Many of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called the Arthashastra. Ashoka grew up to be a bold, troublesome and a cruel young man. He was extremely fond of hunting. According to the Vedic legend, he even killed a lion using only a wooden stick. His father, Bindusara, discovered his ability quite early, so appointed him the governor of Takshila and then Ujjain. When Bindusara died in 273 BC, Ashoka succeeded to the throne, but his coronation was held in 269 BC. Ashoka's kingdom. Ashoka reigned over most of present-day India after a number of military conquests. His empire stretched from the present-day Pakistan and Afghanistan in the west to the present-day Bangladesh and the Indian state of Assam in the east, and as far south as northern Kerala and Andhra Pradesh. Before the Kalinga War, the Mauryan administration under Ashoka was not different from that of his predecessors. Ashoka, like previous Mauryan kings, was at the head of the centralized administrative system. He was helped by a council of ministers that was in charge of different ministries like taxation, army, agriculture, justice, etc. The empire was divided into administrative zones, each one having its hierarchy of officials. The topmost officers at the zonal level had to keep in touch with the king. These officers took care of all aspects of the administration: social welfare, economy, law and order, military in the different zones. The official ladder went down to the village level. The war with Kalinga transformed Ashoka both on a personal as well as public level. He made a number of changes in the administration. Ashoka introduced a new cadre of officials by the name of Dhamma Mahamatta, who was sent across the empire to spread the message of Ashoka's Dhamma, Dharma. There were several cities. The empire was divided into 4 provinces, with the empirical provinces of Pataliputra. Ashoka edicts reveal the 4 provinces' capitals that are Tosali in the east, Ujjain in the west, Suvarangiri in the south, and Takshila in the north. Takshila was the gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to south India. Pataliputra was under the direct control of the king. Messengers went to and fro, and spies kept a watch on the officials. Kings supervised all these with the help of members of the royal family and the ministers. Merchants, officials, and craftspersons probably lived in these cities. In other areas, there were villages of farmers and herders. In central India, there were forests where people gathered forest produce and hunted animals for food. People in different parts of the empire spoke different languages and ate different food. There was a fair taxation system. Farmers were freed from tax and crop collection burden from regional kings. A single currency system was established across India. Besides taxes, tributes were also collected. Unlike taxes, these were collected on a regular basis, and when possible from people who gave a variety of things more or less willingly. War of Kalinga and its impact on Ashoka. Ashoka was the most famous and an ambitious king who wanted to be a Chakravartin, or ruler of the universe, universal monarch. He embarked on a course of conquests to extend his empire.
Maharaj, a soldier had brought a news from battleground.
Send him in immediately.
There is good news, my lord. We have won the war. Now most part of the region is under our kingdom.
But not the whole. I want more land. I want to be the great emperor. The great... Plan and prepare the army for more wars. And to conquer other kingdoms also. Go!
As we talked earlier, Ashoka was an ambitious king, so he tried to win by every means. His close friends and advisers tried to stop him, but he did not.
This is enough, Samrat. It is not fair.
Not fair? Everything is fair in war.
But it is against the rules of war.
Rules of war? There is no rule of war. The only rule is victory and to become a great emperor. Killing is must.
Digvijay, that is victory in all directions, was the aim of Ashoka's policy. Then he heard about the kingdom of Kalinga, which no one in his dynasty had conquered, starting from Chandragupta Maurya. Kalinga, which is modern Orissa, was an independent state on the border of Ashoka's vast empire, which he had inherited.
Kalinga is a fertile land. Moreover, it controls the route to south by the sea and land. It can bring prosperity to Mauryan Empire.
Then we must conquer this land. Prepare the army for the battle.
Thus Ashoka invaded Kalinga in 261 BC. The Kalingans gave a tough fight, but they were defeated ultimately. From the Rock Edict 13th, we learn that in the Kalinga War, 100,000 people died, 150,000 were wounded and made prisoners of war.
I have won. I have become the great emperor.
You have won? Do you realize what have you done? How many innocent people died in this war?
Then what? War is truth. War happens, and in war, either you win or die. And yes, I have won.
Yes, you have won. You have won tears of widows, the cries of orphans, and inflamed bodies. You have won it all.
All these words forced Ashoka to visit the battleground, where he saw the real scenes of war. The sight of such a carnage and massacre of human lives and the sufferings of the wounded made a deep impression on Ashoka's mind. The unhappiness of the women and children made him very sad and unhappy.
Oh God, what have I done? I made 1,000 people die, made orphan children cry, give tear in eyes of wives and mothers. I ruined everything. All this because of war. Oh God, what have I done? Enough. It must not happen again. I won't let it happen again. There will be no war. Only love and peace. Love and peace. Love and peace.
Thus the scene of the battleground changed his mind, and Ashoka vowed never to make a war again. He decided to devote the rest of his life to spread Dhamma, Dharma Vijaya, and not Digvijaya, and that became the goal of Ashoka's life. He was the first emperor in the history of the world to give up war after victory. Thus the Kalinga War became the turning point in Ashoka's life. Ashoka and Buddhism. To Ashoka, Buddhism was a religion of love and ahimsa. After the bloodshed at Kalinga, he embraced Buddhism under the Brahmin Buddhist sages. 2.5 years after the Kalinga War, Ashoka became a faithful and devoted Buddhist. He studied the Buddhist scriptures and made Upagupta his guru. Ashoka joined the monastic order, but did not renounce the world or his kingship. He tried to set the house of Buddhists in order by making rules for monks and nuns. He devoted himself to the spread of Buddhism in India and abroad. He also spent the rest of his life in caring for the welfare of his people and in teaching them how to lead a good life through his Dhamma. Ashoka laid stress on high ideals of conduct in practical life to make men peaceful and virtuous. This was called his Dhamma, the Pali word for Dharma. He did not much care for the finer points of Buddha's philosophy. His Dhamma was a practical code of morals. It aimed at improving lives of the common people. The main points of Ashoka's Dhamma were: people should follow ahimsa, that is, non-injury to all living creatures. People should live in peace and should not fight over land and religion. They should show respect and tolerance to all religions. Children must obey their parents and show them respect. In the same way, students should obey and respect their gurus. Ashoka's services to Buddhism. With Upagupta, Ashoka visited all places connected with the Buddha and gave liberal grants for development. He ordered construction of suitable monuments in honor of Buddha. He constructed monasteries, viharas, at places where Buddhist monks and nuns could reside. He also constructed as many as 84,000 stupas. Ashoka convened the third Buddhist council at Pataliputra in 252 BC to resolve differences in Buddhism and improve the conduct of bhikshus, Buddhist monks. He sent preachers to spread the message of Buddha to foreign lands like Nepal, Tibet, China, and Japan. He sent his own son Mahendra and daughter Sanghamitra to Sri Lanka to spread Buddhism there. Ashoka's edicts and inscriptions. Ashoka was a committed ruler. He loved his subjects and wanted them to live a happy and a peaceful life. For this purpose, he issued rock edicts and inscriptions on religion, general administration, and good conduct. He was the first ancient king who made an effort to speak directly to his people through these edicts and inscriptions. Most of these are composed in Prakrit, the spoken language of the people. Some of these inscribed in Afghanistan are in Greek. There are 44 royal orders or edicts, and each has a number of copies, and they all were placed at all important points in the country. Importance of edicts and inscriptions. These edicts are an important source of information about Ashoka. In 1915, a pillar inscription was discovered mentioning the name of Ashoka Priyadarshi. From this, it was known that Priyadarshi was the title name of Ashoka. Different edicts provide information about the extent of Ashoka's empire. Kalinga was his 5th province. These inform us about Ashoka's love for his people. In one edict he says, "All men are my children, and I desire that they may enjoy every kind of prosperity and happiness." These also inform us about Ashoka's views of religion and religious tolerance. The pillars, edicts, and caves reveal about the art and craft of that age. Their shine is still brilliant. Pali or Prakrit was the language of the common man. Ashoka's friendly relationship with other countries, particularly Ceylon, the present Sri Lanka, are also mentioned in the edicts. The lion capital at Sarnath has been adopted as the national emblem for our country since independence. We see it on our currency notes, coins, and postage stamps. Our national flag has the wheel on it from the Sarnath edict. Ashoka constructed many palaces, stupas, monasteries, and pillars. Ashokan pillars are made of sandstone. They are beautifully polished and shine like gold in sunshine. On the top of each pillar is carved an animal figure, an elephant, a bull, or a lion. The Sarnath pillar is the most impressive. It is 23 meters high. It has 4 lions carved at the top, seated with their back to each other. This design is now used as our national emblem. The artists attained a high skill in polishing the pillars. Ashoka was a great emperor. In the words of H.G. Wells, "In the history of the world there have been thousands of kings and emperors who called themselves their highnesses, their majesties, and their exalted majesties, and so on. They shone for a brief moment and as quickly disappeared. But Ashoka shines and shines brightly like a bright star even unto this day." By H.G. Wells.